talking current events, right? So how have you seen kind of the Black Lives Matter movement start to spread into the wine industry, and like have you seen any kind of changes happening because of this?
Well, I'm sure even in North Carolina, you understand that the Black Lives Matter movement started way before this year. And
Yes.
so the recognition of it in wine may be more this year, just like other industries, being oblivious to, the fact that the movement was way before, um, and or ignoring it in general, I should say. Um, but the question I guess you're asking is, how is it affecting, you think, the wine industry? Is that more?
I guess specifically what I'm saying is, as it has become maybe more publicized to some people that weren't aware of what
Yeah.
was happening, kind of recent events, right? After George Floyd's death, a lot of people that somehow didn't realize this was happening, all of a sudden it became a bigger movement and it kind of spread, I think. And I don't know, I feel like it's blatantly aware for everyone that there's a lack of diversity in wine, right? Like, so have you recently, in the past like few months, have you seen any changes happening?
I think
That
besides more
maybe.
media, because people don't want to feel left out. I think the idea is that people knew all the time. I'm sure everyone knew Trayvon Martin, right? So we're not. So George Floyd's not the first Black man that became like famous from this. Emmett Till, which is even before I was alive. So this has happened several. Um, this happens all the time. I'm not going to even say several, but it's like the being forced to recognize it happened because COVID. There's like a lot of mixture of things. People being home, people being upset because they're unemployed. So there's a lot of other factors that like sparked why, in my opinion, people are paying attention to it now. Forget wine, just in general. And so that's why like the trifecta of all these things happening at the same time, that made people like care. But then at the same time, you're able to see who really cares, because that is what's actually happening. Is that now for all the people who are like for Black lives, this is the week of election, we're seeing so many numbers of people still, voting for someone who clearly is not on board with Black Lives Matter, right? So look, I don't even have to be blunt about this. That's obvious from the way the votes coming in. So forget who is in the White House today. The point is that for the next person to come in, if so many people are, coming to the streets and putting, Black Lives Matter supporting, but then you see in the polls that is not what it's actually showing. So I think this is just a reality check that even with all the media that, we need more diverse wine industry, or we need more women, in places, etc. You still realize that that's not actually what's happening. Like it's for show more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what has been very clear to me. And not so much that I was surprised. I'm also the one who decided to leave to go pursue a wine career in another country, because I did not feel like the opportunities for me here were going to be given to me. So I decided to create something for myself. And anytime anyone reads anything about why I started the communion and why I even took any exams, is because I was basically told I wasn't going to get the job, even though I wanted to become a somm, and I worked in wine shops for, close to, at that point, 6-7 years. And I still was struggling to find a restaurant job. And this is me trying to just work part-time or even on the weekends. I wasn't even trying to become some head somm. I had a whole job working as an engineer still. And so me trying to kind of, as Shirley Chisholm say, bring my own seat to the table when I wasn't invited, was a reason why I started the communion, and why I was like, you know what, if they're not going to accept me here and for me to do the things I want to do, let me just pick up and just go. And so not asking for permission has become my motto, and just being able to do what I want to do, and that may, on my terms, has been the motivation for me. Even though I'm a Black person, I'm a woman, I'm young, compared to the old, hierarchies who run the wine industry. Uh, I have locks, all these things that may be considered very not traditional, obviously, to the wine industry and who you would want to represent your wine. So, or on the floor in that case too. So, from a personal response to that, it's people like, they may see me, whether it's in magazines or whatever, wherever they find me. And to be honest, it wasn't until now that people are looking more for us. So it was a wake-up call in many places for people like, yeah, you're right. We don't work with enough Black people, Black women, women of color, BIPOC people, like in general. And then, so hopefully they're staying true to like, okay, if you're getting and this year was the change for you to like start incorporating more of this into your, whether it's programming, your hiring structure, et cetera, or promoting the people that work for you to move up, then I'm happy it eventually happens. Better late than never, as they say. But at the same time, I do recognize there is a falsified version of this. There's people who put up the black square on their Instagram in June and already took it down. Like this, they did it because it was the trend. Like you saying about like natural wine, like, is it going to be over? Natural wine, I think, will probably live longer than Black Lives Matter to white people who don't really think that Black Lives Matter. They just did it for in the moment and, just to get along, like, okay, we don't want to feel bad. Let's put it up, we don't want anybody cursing us out. So let's just drop the black square on Instagram. So, and it's not really a place of, just genuine, whether it's empathy or recognition that they should do something about it, or they feel like they can't do anything about it. Okay, you don't feel bad. I'm not a racist. I didn't kill George Floyd. That's not what it's about. It's about in all the spaces, how you treat your customers that come into your wine shop. How do you, differently based on how they dress, how they sound, somebody with a long slang when they talk, whatever they say, you gotta be, people talking about being approachable. To be approachable is to meet people where they are. So the same guy who comes in with the do-rag who only wants sweet wine, you treat the same way with the lady who has a suit on who looks like your mother. You should treat them the same way. It's just the idea that that's not how Americans, or even, from my experience outside of the country, how we kind of equate that hospitality. It's like that same hospitality is not extended. You feel safer in one space, and so therefore you give yourself differently to that consumer versus the Black guy coming in with the do-rag and the gold teeth. You think his money don't work in your store? If he has money, he's going to pay for his wine. Then you give him the same type of treatment, and yet that simple human dignity and hospitality is not extended, and then that will not, or I should say, has not still changed, regardless of what happened to George Floyd.
Kind of spinning off that a little bit, I'm sure and are following what's happening with the Court of Master Somms and the New York Times article that's gotten a ton of press and reposting and everything, which is not the first article that has come out about sexual abuse in kind of the court. This isn't kind of a new topic. It's just being kind of more blown up right now, I think. What advice do you have for like young women or just marginalized people trying to break into the kind of more serious side of the wine industry, who maybe are discouraged by, that's an avenue of education and an avenue of, certification and credibility for trying to further that career? Like I was thinking of maybe going for my somm, and now I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be, I'm kind of scared to be involved in that community. Like, what advice do you have for someone who wants to further, their career in wine and kind of further that education? And
why, I guess my second question would be to you, why would you be, tell me what scares you? Are you scared of being sexually abused? Is that why you're scared, or no?
Being, disrespected, or being just, being a young woman and you know, being kind of looked at as, you know, yeah, like being abused or being mistreated because you know, I'm just a young woman trying to further my career in wine. Like, what advice do you have for trying to not
I got the question, but I wanted to understand why, in your case, because you are someone who, you know, feel now conflict with something that this was part of your goals and this is why you're changing. So the first thing I would say for someone who that would be their answer is that if you feel that way, this is real world. This is going to happen everywhere. So please understand that it's not just the court. It is everywhere. It is going to happen in every industry. So if that is what's stopping you, I think there's more of a conversation that you need to have, or your listeners need to have, with understanding that sexual harassment and misogyny and, you know, male predators are everywhere. So that doesn't excuse the court. I'm just saying that if that's your fear, then you need to have a deeper conversation about working in general in spaces around men. Like that's a, you know, just have that. You need to like kind of like figure that out, like how you gonna work. I mean, at the end of the day, I worked in engineering for 13 years, where I may be the only woman in a room of 100 men, literally. I don't think in wine there's ever a need of 100 men being in some place, but let's just say in construction, when I'm building a tower, that is often the case. So please understand that this is not, in my case, that's not something new for me. You know, so not trying to say I'm like more well equipped, if you want to kind of like say, for like sexual misconduct, but you need to kind of know who you are and have this kind of self-awareness, regardless what industry, regardless what exam you're doing, whatever, in order to be able to ground yourself in your career, period. So I want to take that, I want to say that first, if that's what's stopping people from doing any exams or going through the court. However, if your response is because I do not want to pay a company or organization that's going to take my money and obviously promote sexual abuse, then that's different, right? Because I want to understand that. I don't want to give people my money if they actually just going to like continue to, you know, hire more, you know, abusers. Like that's something different. And I would say that is the same for many people. It would make sense not to want to feel like you want to endorse. That's what you're doing when you're financially giving them your money, and you know it's not cheap to study for these things and to pay into the exams. So so on that side of on that flip of the coin, I would just really tell people to think about, understand what this is. This is the Court of Master Sommeliers. Now, without knowing much about you, Mallory, I don't know what your dream was or your dream job in wine is. Sommeliers is one job. I often tell people, do not get caught up with the idea that to be in the wine industry, you have to be a sommelier, which therefore means you need to take the CMS exam. So in that case, you need to then, that goes back to self-awareness, know more about what do you want to do in this industry. You asked earlier about what lights me up and what do I like about wine, and I told you, like in this industry and my job, and I told you about the experiences I shared with guests coming into Portugal. The Court of the Masters, I don't need any of their exams, even though I've taken them, to actually do that job. So once you know that about yourself, you, whomever listening, then you know where to go. If you want to become an actual sommelier and you want to know what other avenues, then I would literally start looking at what other sommelier exams and course routes that are out there that are about wine service in a restaurant. That is very specific, right? So the difference in taking the certified level, which is what I have, you know, in me taking the WSET exam, is the fact is that one, do not do service, right? But the level of knowledge, and also there is on the exams, well, at least when I took the certified level, there was cocktails on the exam for certified somm. So in this case, you don't have to know about for the WSET level 3, etc. You know, when you get to like diploma level, yes, you go back into the spirits, but there is something that you need to think about. Is like, what is your main focus or what you're trying to get out of this? Is it literally for the sake of wine education? What other avenues are out there or other organizations that can give you wine education? Is it service? What places can you get that service knowledge? And a lot of the assaults that you heard in there is people who have an exposure or training with, you know, master somms and, you know, need this kind of mentorship. So then this kind of like removes that, like find mentors in a different way, opens up your mind. And instead of just like seeking out, imagine it's like being in a popular group, right? If it's like, oh, what do I have to do to get in that group? And they're like, oh, we got to jump you in, or we got to, you know, something crazy like, oh, okay, I'll just go get jumped in so I can. You have to make the decision to like, is that something that I actually want to move forward? Is that something that resonates with me? Is that how I want to get into that group? And again, I'm part of a sorority, so at the end of the day, I know what it feels like to want to be into a group, but I understand why I want to be part of it. I understand the rituals of it, and I understand of what I'm saying yes to in advance. I'm not blindsided, you know, by what's about to happen. So in this case, you know, co-signing onto any of this, just making sure, and, you know, more direct for you, Mallory, like, what are your future visions? And maybe you're like, I don't know what I want to do when I'm like 40, but I do know this is what I like to do tomorrow, and this is what I like to plan for. And then recognizing which one of the educational structures, if you need that, if you would like that, is can actually give that to you without having, you know, having to actually subscribe to anything the CMS is handing out. If that's, you know, if you want to go against, if anybody's listening, want to go against that and want to know other alternates, I feel like that's the best way to do it. It's really reflect on yourself and what your goals are, and make a decision from there. And that's to be honest, how I was able to like know that I was good with my certified SOM exam. It's funny because that also made me remember when, now that this is out, about when people ask me a question like, oh, because I don't know if you know, there's no Black female master som. So of course, when they hear that you're a som and you're Black, they're like, oh my God, they're gonna be the first one. And I'm like, not me, you know, like, and it's just kind of like, I'm okay, you know. It's a lot of, you know, dedication that you have to put into that. And that's something that I realized, even without knowing these stories at first or whatever, I realized that was something my future me did not want to do. I don't want to spend the next 10 years studying for some one exam. I would rather be spending that time investing my resources, my money, into like building my own business, whether it's here and or abroad. And there's other like projects that I would like to do. So I'm like, I'll pass. Yeah. And I'm all okay with that. And I think that's the way to like think of it first. And regardless if this article came out and not, I live a life and made that decision to know that I would have still said that to you if you asked me this question last year or before any of this came out. So that's always been my advice to people, and it still remains the same. Even more so because now people are asking. I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad you're asking. I'm going to say the same thing again. Why are you not looking at an import business? You said you want to make money. You want to do this. You want to do that. Okay, why are you not looking at this? Why are you not looking at other? People just lack the education of what you can do in wine. And so a lot of what I hope to do soon with a program I'm developing is to actually give people more of an exposure about what are the different wine jobs. I feel like people just think that it's just, oh, som, you know, and so they just kind of get som crazy. And I'm like, okay, in that article it said a master som make what, $150,000, $160,000. So I can understand someone who may have not had a college degree or worked in a restaurant and hospitality for a long time, kind of like looking at this as like goals. I need to become a master som so I can get that. But there are people who own their company and make well over that and still in the wine industry. And someone who like was the first kind of like person that kind of like said that to me. And I remember I'm coming from an engineering salary, so also that wasn't so like exciting for me. It's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm okay. I make this already, so I don't care. But that wasn't the thing to carry like in front of me. You know, I already quit my job in engineering, you know, so to, you know, where I made a competitive salary to this. And so, so in this case, that wasn't, if I was chasing money, I would have just stayed in my old career. Yeah. Versus someone else who's like chasing that as a salary, like that's what they're driven by. So when I spoke to someone who I thought was MS, and I was like, oh, any pointers or any tips, at that time I think I was about to take certified exam. And he was like, I never took any of those exams. He said, actually, I failed them. I was like, oh, but you would have never known because he was this top, som at all the high-end restaurants and all this as his like pedigree. Now he makes his own wine, had his own wine label and things like this. And I was like, whoa, like, how you got this job and how you doing all these things? He was like, oh yeah, I decided to focus on being a businessman. Like I needed to understand business. I needed to understand finance. That's what I wanted. I wanted to make, he was like, yes, I make well over what a master som would make. And of course they make other money from other things, but I'm sure with his own company and at this point in his life, he makes probably a decent, let's just say, amount of money that it would put a master som like a salary to shame because of what he's been able to acquire. And so I think I'm using that story as an example of when you have to be the deciding factor, not the trend, not the documentaries, not what's cool to say on the wine streets, but really what's in you. What do you want to do in this industry? How do you want to make a difference? Or what makes you light up, like how I told you the story about my times, exploring wines of Portugal with people. So
thank you for answering that. I appreciate that advice and that insight a lot. I mean, I've only been kind of deciding like, oh, I think I want to be in wine like somewhat recently in my life. So, kind of deciding what avenue I want to go down. And I'm sure, people watching this may feel the same way. So I appreciate that insight from someone who's kind of had to sort of do that as well. So this is our last question. What do you see, like, what are you excited about for you in 2021? Like, what's kind of next for you in your career, and like what's getting you excited for this next year coming up?
I mentioned about my wine club flight crew, so I'm excited to have that at least up and currently, I want to say it's not taken off yet, but it's doing its little baby steps right now. And so, I think that a lot of people, now are thinking about virtual lifestyles and entertainment as a real thing to stay. And so whether I'm here or I'm in Portugal, and I did go back to Portugal during quarantine. So yes, I'm one of those few people with the special seal of approval in my passport. So I've been able to, I was there for June and July. So it was nice to kind of reconnect with the wineries that I knew and just kind of like hang out with the winemakers and kind of like fake forget, by just going out to the beach and just having moments out there and really bringing what I wanted to put out in September and, bringing people over to Portugal over there for 2021. So it's funny because I don't know how people find my website sometimes, but the amount of people that click on my, like sign me up for the trip. Like I have like an area on my website. People go right and click, like they all excited. At one point I said, wait a minute, I think it still says 2020 and people are like, sign me up still. I can't even get there. But let me just like change it officially to say 2021. But that interest, however people are coming to my website and they like getting really excited about traveling again, that I'm super excited to host people. And now that it's I guess as my brand grow, having the flight crew be more than just the virtual tastings and wine box experience, but having those people as just members just kind of come over and visit when they want to because they hear me spreading the Portuguese gospel, or if they're going to go to Spain or Italy or other places that I can be able to help them. So I'm really excited about having the flight crew take off as, do a full liftoff. So since that was something that was birthed out of this, as well as United We Taste, I would, I'm like crossing my fingers that some of these people that I've been tasting with it virtually, some of them I've never met in person, some of them I know already from traveling around. So I would love to like see some of them in person, and host like a reunion of some sort, as like a nice meetup, and like sending invites to like the whole crew. Like, thank you for like hanging on, for like being part of our tastings for like a year. March will be a year. Like we started literally like the second week of COVID. So I'll be like super excited to like have as many people like fly into somewhere and let's just like kind of doing like hosting everybody who can come out, like these type of things. I'm like, and hopefully someone sponsors it and pay for all my people to come. Because we've had people like taste with us from China, Australia, everywhere. People have been literally part of the tasting as and that was the point, was to like make the wine community stronger globally. Like I feel that way because I travel, so I connect with people one-on-one when I'm there. But it's even cooler to kind of like have now someone that I know in Portugal staying in contact with someone that I introduced them to in Germany through United We Taste. And now they have like their own interactions too. And then someone in Napa staying in contact with somebody in Australia because they had questions about Australian wine, because what they're doing over in, you know, Napa. And so that's what community is. I'm literally trying to build a global community, and wine should be the easy part of doing that. So just really one day, you know, even me, you know, hugging all these people in real life when hugging is legal, will be like a dream come true. So hopefully in 2021, I get to check off some of these people off my list and actually see them in person. You know, so that for me, you know, is about, you know, keeping the community and making it stronger and then just growing it from there.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation with us. Find you to be very inspiring, and I appreciate like all of your honest advice so much. So